So, good morning, Dr. Hamilton. Thank you for being with us today.
Good
And I
morning.
would like to introduce you to our audience today. Dr. Hamilton is the director of the Breast and Gynecological Cancer Program at Sarah Cannon Research Institute and a member of Susan G. Komen Central Tennessee's Board of Directors. Her role at Sarah Cannon includes not only managing the research program locally in Nashville, but across Sarah Cannon's other strategic areas, including Tennessee Oncology in Nashville, Kansas City, and the Florida Cancer Specialist. In addition to caring for her patients with breast and gynecological cancers in the clinic, she is also an investigator for phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. She is also a partner within Tennessee Oncology. So welcome, Dr. Hamilton, and thank you for spending time with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So Sarah Cannon Institute is one of the world's leading clinical research organizations conducting community-based clinical trials throughout the U.S. and United Kingdom. Can you tell us about some of the research that you are personally working on in the area of breast cancer?
Absolutely, Dawn. So our passion really is bringing clinical trials and cutting edge therapies to patients where they live. So we don't believe that somebody should have to travel to another state or far away to an academic institution to get the latest and greatest of care. And so we're really trying to bring those trials into the communities where patients live. So as you already alluded to, I do research both in our phase 1 drug development unit, so brand new drugs, as well as later stage research, phase 2 and phase 3 registrational trials. So the last trial that will happen before a drug gets approved. These are often the randomized trials. So right now in breast cancer, there are a lot of exciting new drugs. We just recently in the past year had 2 new drugs approved for HER2 positive breast cancer, a very particularly aggressive type of breast cancer, trastuzumab deruxtecan and tucatinib. Trastuzumab deruxtecan is an antibody drug conjugate. So that's a little bit different than normal chemotherapy that I call naked chemo, where you infuse the chemotherapy and it goes and kills cancer cells, but it also goes all over the rest of the body. And that's where we get things like low white blood cell count and hair loss and neuropathy or burning and stinging in the fingers and toes. Trastuzumab deruxtecan, being an antibody drug conjugate, hooks the chemo to an antibody, and this antibody only targets cancer cells. So it's a way to get the medicine right where we need it and leave some of the rest of the body alone. Tucatinib, on the other hand, is a new drug for HER2 positive disease as well. It's a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, a pill. So it's similar to drugs like lapatinib or neratinib that we have approved, but what's really exciting about tucatinib is it only blocks HER2. It doesn't block EGFR that these other drugs block, and so what that translates to is less side effects for patients.
Oh, those are exciting. And are these already on the market or still in clinical trial?
Both of those are on the market and have been approved in the past year based on trials that we've done here at Sarah Cannon and a variety of other places.
Oh, that is so exciting. I know your patients are, I know chemo's never easy. So I know no matter what kind of treatment you're going through, it's difficult, but these sound like major steps forward in that area.
Absolutely. We're very excited.
That's great. So what are you learning from your research that's going to change the future?
I think, in this decade, I think every decade kind of has its genre or theme. I really think what we're doing right now in breast cancer that's most exciting is tailoring therapy to the individual patient. We're learning that breast cancer treatment shouldn't be one size fits all. What it says under the microscope may not be the entire answer. And we're getting smarter in using genomic profiling tests or more tools to help us narrow who should get what. A lot of times the term escalation of treatment or de-escalation of treatment is used. And that kind of has some negative connotations too of, well, why do I want less? Or why do I have to have more? But this is really about finding the right size treatment for the right patient. And everybody's cancer is not identical. And so we're getting a lot better at realizing that some people may need a little bit less treatment to do just as well as if they had more. And that there are some people with very aggressive cancers that may need even a little bit more treatment than what's standard of care. And so I think what's exciting is really learning more about how to tailor that therapy for the individualized patient for a true personalized medicine experience.
Well, I think we all look forward to getting more personalized treatment. It makes sense, you know, that would be the case. But boy, it's taken us a while to get there. So thank you for your work in that area too. Can you give us a brief overview of the clinical trials in general and why it's important and safe for breast cancer patients to participate?
Yeah, you know, it's a long process in the United States to get a new drug through clinical trials and into approval. So, you know, the number one reason to access a clinical trial is that you get access to new drugs that are very promising earlier than you otherwise would. There's actually been a large study about patients who receive standard of care or regular therapy versus patients that receive therapy on a clinical trial. And patients on clinical trial, regardless of the arm assigned to, even if the trial is randomized, which only some trials are, do better than those that are on standard of care. Because those patients are guaranteed to get at least standard of care, and they're often getting something different that we think is better or something in addition to that standard of care. And so those patients do just as well, really, if not better, than those on standard of care. So, you know, I think that's an important thing to educate people about. You know, a lot of people just remember placebo trials from decades and decades ago when we really didn't have effective therapies. We never just give somebody a placebo now. That doesn't happen. No trial is really designed that way. So, you know, for phase 3 breast cancer trials, those last ones before something gets approved, sometimes those may have a placebo as part of them when we're not sure if a drug really adds a benefit, but they're always on a standard of care backbone. So nobody is going to get anything less than a standard of care. And so I think that's important to clarify for patients. There are a lot of drugs that are coming where we're tweaking the tolerability or you know, adding an additional targeted agent that helps some chemo work better, or something like an antibody drug conjugate where we can give the chemo but target it just to the cancer cell and leave the rest of the body alone. So it's really a way to access drugs that probably will be the standard of care in about 10 years from now, earlier.
Great. Have you found that your patients, particularly during the time of pandemic, how has that affected clinical trials?
Yeah, you know, it's affected some things and it hasn't affected some ways. I think the FDA has been very helpful and has published some documentation and some guidance around COVID that, you know, in certain situations where it's not particularly safe for somebody to come in for a single lab check or something like that, that some of these things have a little bit of flexibility and can be waived around the time of COVID. But we have to remember that cancer treatment, you've got to get that treatment. And so regardless of clinical trial or not, those patients are coming into our clinic to receive treatment. And so that really hasn't changed whether they're on clinical trial or on standard of care drugs. I think the nice thing is our patients on clinical trials, we keep a very close eye on them. We do a lot of phone call checks as well. We have the ability to do telemedicine here now as well. So that's been very helpful through COVID. I think probably the thing that has changed the most is there are some patients that live a farther distance away that previously has come for a clinical trial. And depending on where they live, road trips may just not be as feasible for their family or something that they're as interested in. But, you know, we've still been getting a good number of patients. We've luckily had no COVID outbreaks among patients in our clinic. We're being very proactive about temperature screening and calling about symptoms beforehand and wearing masks. And luckily those measures have been very beneficial.
Speaking of the pandemic, can you talk to us about getting mammograms? I know at one point the recommendation was to kind of hold off, particularly if it was a regular mammogram. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is actually something I'm a little bit worried about. There's always a subset of patients that aren't regular about their mammogram, and we know that mammograms work the best when they're regularly done and we have the opportunity to catch these cancers early. If we catch breast cancer early, survival is over 95%. It's really when we can't catch those early that people get into trouble with cancer. So, hospitals now are very well equipped to take care of doing the screening mammograms. I myself had my mammogram here at our hospital a couple of months ago in May, kind of right in the heat of a lot of the pandemic, and I felt completely comfortable. They've spaced the visits out, so there aren't a lot of people sitting in the waiting room, which is safer. We're cleaning doorknobs. You can actually wear your mask during your mammogram. That doesn't interfere with your mammogram. So I think it's really important for people to get back on the schedule, to get in and get their mammogram and check that off the box for this year.
Great. Dr. Hamilton, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for your service on the Komen Board of Directors for Central Tennessee. We appreciate all the work that you do, both for us individually and then for the common good across our country. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.